Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs here. If you're not familiar with us, Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center. We offer readings, workshops, and literary programming for people of all ages and backgrounds. You can find more information on our website, wab.org. Writers and Books would like to call attention to the complex and troubled history on the lands on which we live and work. We are hosting this event from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Onondaga, or the people of the Great Hill. Thank you so much for joining us for Poets for Ukraine. We're so pleased to be raising money to provide humanitarian aid and medical relief to injured Ukrainians through the local nonprofit RocMaidan. I want to thank RocMaidan for their work, and I want to thank them for being here. We'll hear from them later this evening on how you can further support their efforts. First, we'll be hearing from local poets read from Words from War, New Poems from Ukraine. As they say in the preface, poetic language often reveals that our present situation is only one of many possibilities by helping us envision other ways to be, think, feel. In reflecting on the current experiences, poets often manage to create the language for future ones. The experience of surviving war, of fixing up homes and rebuilding relationships, of healing and forgiving. It is their words that we'll find ourselves expressing grief and solidarity, anger and love. First, I want to bring up Sonya Bilocerkowycz to give some introductory remarks. Sonya is an Ukrainian American writer from South Dakota. She's the author of the 2019 essay collection, On Our Way Home from the Revolution, Reflections on Ukraine. A 2022 NEA Creative Writing Fellow, Sonya teaches creative writing at SUNY Geneseo. Sonya.
Thank you so much, Dan. Hi, everyone. Thanks to Dan and everyone at Writers and Books for hosting this event. Thanks to RocMaidan for the vital work that you all are doing for our loved ones in Ukraine. And thanks to all of you, my fellow writers and readers, for being here today. Your presence is a form of solidarity, and I would like to share a few thoughts about what it means to encounter Ukrainian poetry together in this moment. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Okay. So my grandparents, my Busa and Dido, came to the US in 1949 as war refugees from Ukraine. They settled in Chicago and decorated their home with portraits of Ukrainian poets. The main wall of their living room featured a set of 3 wood-carved portraits of the beloved poets Taras Shevchenko, Lesa Ukrainka, and Ivan Franko. These poets wrote in the Ukrainian language, and each in their own way fostered Ukrainian literary and national consciousness. I recall that there were also embroidered poems by Shevchenko framed and hanging in other rooms of the house. Busha, my grandmother, would often recite long stanzas of his work from memory. You might assume that my grandparents were members of the intelligentsia, but in fact, they were peasants. They were farmers back in Ukraine, and in America, they worked on the assembly lines of multiple factories. Busha attended a rural village school until roughly the 6th grade, but despite having little formal education, she read and discussed and recited and revered Ukrainian poetry. To better understand my grandmother's poetic devotion, I suggest employing a decolonial lens. During the short period of her youth, Busha's Western Ukrainian village was occupied by the Poles, by the Soviets, by the Nazis, and then again by the Soviets. Busha and her siblings were forced to learn and speak the language of each of these occupiers under different circumstances. Previously, the poets Shevchenko, Ukrainka, and Franco had all defied imperial Russian prohibitions against the Ukrainian language, the so-called Little Russian dialect, in order to compose their work. And later, under Soviet-era policy in the 1930s, an entire generation of Ukrainian modernist writers were targeted, deported, and murdered by Moscow authorities. "My only weapon is the word," feminist poet Lesa Ukrainka wrote in 1896, "but there's no reason both of us should die." How precious such verses become when neither the survival of your mother tongue nor your own survival can be taken for granted. I offer this context to remind us that Ukrainian resistance to Russian colonialism did not simply materialize out of thin air on February 24th. It also did not first begin in 2014, in that earlier phase of Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine, which prompted Maximchuk and Rosochinsky to publish their stunning anthology in 2017, which we'll be reading from this evening. No, Ukrainian resistance to Moscow can be traced through centuries. "A Russian song is a forewarning," Alexander Kabanov writes in this anthology. To me, the line suggests a historical familiarity, a deep intuition about what the Russian song has brought before. Kabanov is a Ukrainian poet, writes since March, his home city, Kherson, which is in the south of Ukraine, has been under Russian occupation. Reports from Kherson and other territories have led independent experts to determine that Russia is, at this very moment, committing genocide against Ukrainians. Russia's colonial and genocidal war is hastening a new wave of Ukrainianization, and it has also instigated a decolonial awakening throughout the larger region. There's one quick example I'd like to share with you. Since it is illegal to speak against the war within Russia, activists and artists there from non-Slavic ethnic minority groups are using their indigenous languages to make protest art and opposition statements. The idea seemed to come to everyone at the same time. Sonya Bilocerkowycz, the founder of a magazine for Russians of color, recently told the New Statesman. "In the second week of the war, I started seeing anti-war posters in minority languages like Buryat and Kalmyk on Instagram. Voicing opposition in an indigenous language provides some personal protection. As On notes, the authorities probably don't even have the correct keyboard downloaded to translate such messages. But it also helps to defy the entire colonial project. The struggle for freedom in Ukraine is connected to the struggle for freedom in Belarus and in Georgia and in Syria and in Kazakhstan and in Russia itself. And so it is a profound act of solidarity to gather this evening and listen to Ukrainian poetry, to encounter Ukrainian voices on their own terms, to bear witness to Ukrainian creativity and resilience. I'd like to read just the opening stanza of one poem by Oksana Lutsyshina, co-translated from the Ukrainian by the poet and Olena Jennings. "Eastern Europe is a pit of death and decaying plums. I hide from it in the body of America, but sooner or later I'll slip from this light back down into that other, and we'll start talking about death because that is our national sport, talking about death, sad yet beautiful, hoping that the world will hear us and gasp at the beauty and sadness." Lutsyshina's poetic speaker longs to be heard, to believe that one's suffering might prompt a reaction in another. This stanza also compels me to consider my position as a Ukrainian American writer who is, perhaps similarly, hiding in the body of America, a nation that must undergo its own colonial reckoning. Our support for Ukraine carries with it the responsibility to strive for deeper solidarity with all colonized people. Later in this same poem about the bloodlands of Eastern Europe, Lutsyshina writes, "It endures and revives. small like newly seeded grass in the evening, strong like the grandchildren of those that survived the war. When will I die? Someone asks in my still childish voice. Ukrainians are always talking about death because our survival cannot be taken for granted. Kole ya pomru? That is an impossible question, but I cherish this opportunity to ask it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Sonya. I want to point out the book Words for War is on sale downstairs in our bookstore. 30% of the proceeds are going to RocMaidan, so you can check that out downstairs. Our first reader for tonight is Alicia Hoffman.
So I am going to read 3 poems by poet Anastasia Afanasieva. The first one's a little longer and then the 2 are a little bit shorter than that. You guys can hear me okay? The first poem is, she says we don't have the right kind of basement in our building. She says we don't have the right kind of basement in our building. I had to leave. No one can hide in there. We couldn't leave for a whole week straight. Men elbowed us out. We were weaker. There was no room for us. In the past, we thought about nice furniture, home improvements and such. Now we think our basement doesn't work. It won't protect us. It'll collapse on us. It's worse than sitting outside. We dragged our mattresses and pillows onto the floor so that we could fall down as soon as it all starts. We fell down and lay there. My husband stayed behind. Someone had to stay home. Otherwise, there'd be no home to come back to. There may be nowhere to go back to anyway. He watches the apartment so no one moves in and takes our things. He calls once a week from some high rise where he magically gets cell reception. He says a few words and hangs up. I am alive. Call back next Saturday. When a four-wheeler with a mortar passed down the street, we didn't ask, who are you? Whose side are you on? We fell down to the floor and lay there. On our way to the market, the bullets whistled over our heads. We arrived here with a single bag. There wasn't enough room for people, let alone things. She speaks as the August air enters the room in the yard. My coworkers are gathering overripe plums. Last year, those were perfect. This time around, we missed our harvest. Now it's too late. I listen, and I don't know if heaven and hell really exist. They must be separated by a journey in a minivan, packed full of people where plums ripen in silence, where people fall to the ground, and we're experiencing these moments after death. The next poem is You Whose Inner Void. Your inner void is larger than the hole in your pocket, larger than a black hole. You hang laundry in the yard as in your heyday in the 30s when the earth burned under your feet. You no longer remain, nor breathe, nor look back. You proceed without cease on towards the bright victory, the color of sickly blue flesh, blood spilled by chance. You who felt a void before, toss your hats. Cry for joy. Fire has replaced your void. You believe this fire is yours, this Olympic fire. You lofted the Olympic torch, brought it so close, the barren land caught fire like fields of dry grain. The barren earth turns what is sown. Nature abhors a void. The torch still burns. You only have to gaze so long on water and fire to understand fire too rushes into a vacuum. See how alien intent winds through your speech, how foreign fire flows through you. You say, it's not foreign, I own my fire. This is not anger, rather a kind of love. See how we love you. Our engorged heart is slaked in blood. We'll save you, we'll kill you in the name of love. And the last one is an excerpt from a longer poem titled Cold. And a neighbor lady the other day lost her glorious dog, Tita. And now she stands and chews a clump of snow in her palm. And a hand without a glove is red as a shame. And this I saw in the morning walking out of my window. Walk, hug my torso as if I know your torso. Walk as if a hand can console a human torso. Step away from me, you idiot, my neighbor lady yells. I am unaware of the concept of neighbors. Their faces strange, I see in backyards on the morning walk to work. On the evening walk from work, I see their faces. And my body to their eyes, my body is snow. Momentary beings, lungs in snow, who can console snow lungs? To winter's narrow splinter of a street, to an idiot neighbor and her idiot dog, we will now announce glory. To quiet and naked branches of poplars, to faces also quiet in winter's splinter of a wind, say glory. To a voice you don't hear, the real voice, cold, cut from stone in a bone, glory. To no one, unknown, one blue on white, and quiet that splinters the winter, glory.
Thank you so much. Our next reader is Janet Collins. Collins, sorry.
Good. It's hard. Hello. So I'm going to be reading from Oksana Luchina, and you've heard one of the poems before, but I'm likely to read it a bit differently. Eastern Europe is a pit of death. Eastern Europe is a pit of death and decaying plums. I hide from it in the body of America, but sooner or later I'll slip from this flight back down into that other, and we'll start talking about death, because that is our national sport, talking about death. Sad yet beautiful, hoping that the world will hear us and gasp at the beauty and sadness. My lover spreads his fingers with his own. He was educated in good old France, then America. He also studied Buddhism and erotica somewhere near the borders of Thailand. It's good to drink wine with him and chat, but not about death or Eastern Europe, because the world's a shithole and it's worthwhile to learn only one art, that of hopping from one pleasure outlet to another, and not giving a damn about plague-infected continents where the corpse-eating flies. He kisses me goodnight and disappears into his dream. The lion mind full of summer sun and ephemeral sweetness. Middle Europe, or the beat new Herbert whispers in my ear. Middle Europe enters a labyrinth without a single turn. A labyrinth of faith and freshly laid brick. It enters and doesn't exit. It endures and revives, small like newly seeded grass in the evening, strong like the grandchildren of those that survived the war. When? When will I die? Someone asked in my still childish voice, but I don't hear the answer because it suddenly becomes dark in this death pit where Miklos Ragnitsky is writing his last poem. That was translated from the Ukrainian by Oksana Zutishina and Olena Jennings. Next poem is He Asked, Don't Tell Me. He asked, the next poem is He Asked, Don't Help Me. He asked, don't help me. Help the soldiers. I don't need anything anymore. Neither medicine, nor heat, nor light, nor a drink of water. The room I'm leaving is not this one, but the room of my body. They say that God doesn't exist, that the one that exists is human. But as a human, can he exist? Is his existence necessary? They say that I'm at the end of life. I still don't understand anything. Last night, it hurt so bad that I forgot everything, even who I was. No heaven, no blessed darkness. All I saw were soldiers. I felt their thirst in my bones. Don't come to help me. Help those who still want to make children. Translated from the Ukrainian by Oksana Maximchuk and Max Doshinsky. Next poem, I Dream of Explosions. I dream of explosions. Someone set a lighter to the bush of living fire, invisible, with an invisible hand. There's no place on earth that's safe. There's no earth anymore. There's nothing. How can we begin with the words, nothing exists? The whole body becomes an organ of sight, finds a foothold for true vision. You fall out of the world as out of a sieve, and you see it's not there. It's an illusion. So why does it still hurt so bad? Translated from the Ukrainian by Oksana Maximchuk and Max Doshinsky. And the last poem, Don't Touch Live Flesh. Don't touch live flesh. You must touch a wound no longer open. This one, let me embrace it. Coil myself around it, leave it alone. Let me carry it back home, alive in a boat of flesh. The resolute flower of summer, the most succulent of berries. Translated from the Ukrainian by Oksana Maximchuk and Max Doshinsky.
Thanks so much, Janet. Our next reader is Lynn Smith.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks everyone for being here. It's a tremendous pleasure and honor to read 3 poems by Ostap Slavinsky, translated by Tatiana Filmanova and Anton Tensa. Sonya spoke in her introduction really beautifully about the solidarity of this event, but also the distance that it reminds us of. And I think that's one of the things that translation itself asks us to see. I like to think of it more as translating, right? Conversing, making contact with. And there's something very beautiful about these translations, and also about Slavinsky's work and the way very seemingly innocuous events, as you'll see in this first poem, like riding a bicycle, suddenly transform. So I'll share 3 poems. Lovers on a bicycle. She rides sitting on the frame like a bird, perched on a branch, puffed up, mature, with 2 clenched knees that signal sweetly to the truck drivers passing by. Him we don't see clearly, but we hear his flask clanking against the seat with every pedal stroke. He's humming a ditty. Where did he pick it up? Which war zone? No one's heard it here. She holds a handful of hazelnuts and feeds him without turning. She passes them back and he catches them with his mouth, which resembles a fringed brown patch. On the way back from the station, she'll be alone, looking like a paper doll, dry, straight, two-dimensional, used to making do with this love, as she is used to making a meal out of nothing, a dash of tea, a couple of potatoes. She will ride through the first bout of rain, reeling with her feet the overexposed film, an endless blank frame, where he runs into the living room and spins her in his arms. So it goes, this empty language of love, bargaining with hope, like a one-legged chair with a stove. Let me be, at least until midday. I won't live through the night. Kicking the ball in the dark. Towards whose goal were we kicking the ball in the dark, when we could no longer tell treetops apart from distant mountain ridges? Zoran says, go back, there's a droning river ahead. Just beavers with their murky treasures, that's all, the remains of old swimming holes. Burning sheets fend off the shadows when, exhausted, we think only of bed and firewood. Solar plexus lit the chambers of the forest, a padlock. Lines we could read, we sensed the music and wanted to dance. Scattered tin instruments of some sort were playing before our eyes. No one here talks to me anymore. They speak of the caliphate. The shattered brick yard, above it glows a sextant and the twinkling hounds run loose. Zoran and Zorana in a gingerbread house, further up, a water boundary. Somebody slept at the abandoned checkpoint. Somebody saw the children. An ill-fated longitude, by all accounts. Light up the sextant, summon the angels, make them a bed in the brickyard, I say to Zora. Eagle folk, whom the Greeks tell to take it in the mouth at the border crossing, I can feel the blood turning heavily in the temples. Dirty boots and used horses, children born on the road, the specially invited musicians, sacks in which flour turns to sand overnight, and wine which cannot turn back. Is it all invented by the blue eye flickering in the top right-hand corner? Does radio static speak to us in the language of the spirits? Hate does not let you sleep and drives you to the mountain ridge in the middle of the night, tells you to shoot at the gaping sky. Where's the office to file a complaint against fear? Scraps of brass pipes resound in the branches of a tree, now entirely bare. Autumn arrives here like an envelope with a tuft of grass, which ignites, burns, doesn't go out, and dances in the dark like a fiery lung, and plays with the dark some baffling game. And then finally a poem which seems both a call to the future and a call to the past as well, a scene from 2014. For years, I would wake up when he returned from his night shift around 3 or 4 in the morning. He showered for a long time and went to bed just as black, coal-like, almost invisible in the dark. Did he simply dissolve one night? We're silent. In a moment, she bursts into laughter. Some kid runs past us, trips and falls right on the top of the flour sack that he's carrying, and his sneakers fly up high in the heart of a little white cloud. So white, this explosion, she says, so quiet.
Thank you so much. Now we want to hear a word from RocMaidan. I'm going to bring up Elena Delay and Julia Hoyer.
Oh, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for organizing this event. The poems you hear today are incredible in today's reality, and they reflect what people in Ukraine live day in and day out, and they have been living it for the past over 3 months now. in horror. And if you think that these poems were written after 2014 annexation of Crimea, you realize this war did not start just 3 months ago. It started much, much sooner. So we are from RocMaidan, and we thank you for your willingness to donate through our organization to Ukraine, if you wish to do so. And we were this group was created in 2014 after Russia annexed Crimea and started the war in eastern Ukraine. We function under the umbrella of the Ukrainian Cultural Center of Rochester, which is located in Webster. And over the years, our mission has always been to help victims of war. And we started with helping orphaned children, widows, soldiers that needed rehabilitation after being at the front lines. And over the years, the work was consistent, but it subsided. On February 24th, when Russia invaded Ukraine, all of a sudden we became the central organization in this area to collect, process, so to say, and provide help to Ukraine. And we have been working tirelessly ever since, and we have been collecting monetary donations, medical supplies, ambulances, et cetera, and sending them to Ukraine to help them. You know, my friends, sometimes my American friends sometimes ask me, wouldn't it be easier if Ukrainians gave in and just came to some kind of compromise? Wouldn't that save lives? And every Ukrainian will tell you no, it would not, because the same killings would take place. They would just be silent, they would be secretive, but Ukrainians still would die. And we've gone through this more than once before. My name is Elena, only because I grew up in Soviet Union. My true Ukrainian name is Olena, but my passport could not be in that name. It had to be in the Russian equivalent of that name, and that speaks mountains, if you think about it. And that is why we are fighting, because we want to have our true names in our passports. You also hear about all this aid that is being sent to Ukraine, but many countries, and yet there are volunteers like us pleading to people to donate and help and raise funds. And that is because there are so many victims. Russia deliberately is killing civilians, wounding civilians. They're targeting civilian territories in Ukraine, universities, houses. People are being killed, wounded, displaced. If you think about how many millions are now without home, and how many millions need help. And there is, if you think about the size of Russia and size of Ukraine, just take a look at the map. That power is so unequal, and yet Ukrainians are standing strong with the help of the world. And that is because, and because of that, we, RocMaidan, is the organization that is, like many others around the world, have to put our force together, have to ask you for assistance and help. And together with us, with you, and with the world, Ukraine will prevail and democracy will prevail. And I will let Yulia speak about our current efforts. Meantime, I am going to give you a little informational flyer that has QR code to our Venmo, PayPal, and Amazon accounts, and a little bit about us, all information. So please visit our website, our social media, and find out more. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yulia Pablook, and I'm the wife of the coordinator for RocMaidan. As you have heard already, we started the organization literally from our own garage because we couldn't just stay indifferent to whatever was going on in our own motherland. So over the years, yes, we have been helping these families of the wounded soldiers and the fallen heroes. And most recently, the need became just the need just expanded so much. So we are reaching out to whoever is available, whoever can help us do some fundraising and just spread the word about us. We we put all our efforts to help our loved ones back home. We all are professionals, we have our full-time jobs, and we just cannot afford to let ourselves do anything else apart from that, other than spend every single minute of our everyday life to help back home. We still have families back home. That's why it's so, it's a throw wound for us, unfortunately. So at this point, RocMaidan is aiming all of our efforts to collect funds to fundraise for to purchase another ambulance. With the help of Monroe County, we were able to deliver 5 of them already to Ukraine. We were able to purchase 2 more in Europe, and we're fundraising for another one. And since pretty much the beginning of the war this year, a lot of our efforts go towards purchasing IFAKs, which is individual first aid kits that would save a life of a soldier or a civilian. I do have a flyer that explains what goes in there, and each IFAK costs around $150. Because we buy them in bulk, we're able to get them at the discounted rate of, I believe, $122 each. And usually we buy a bulk of 500 at least at a time. So every time we collect something like this, you're able to save a life there. It usually comes with a tourniquet, which would stop massive bleeding of an extremity, right? It has some traumatic shears to be able to reach the area of the trauma. It has some nasopharyngeal tube that would help to start breathing again in case of if the patient is in shock from pain. It has lots of bandages, Israeli bandages. It has a hemostatic bandage that would also help clot blood, so patient would not lose a lot of blood. That would be the most actually, like second cause of death is from blood loss. So we also have several lists of collections for those who would like just to bring something specifically, if they want to just go to Wegmans and buy something and bring it to us. Thanks to Xerox, we have a warehouse in Webster, and this way we have a team of workers who come, volunteers who come every Tuesday, Thursday nights, including tonight, to accept the donations, to sort them, to pack them, to put them in pallets. So we have the whole system work out already. We do have several lists, as I said. Some of them include literally underwear and socks, sleeping bags, the diapers. We still send those as well because unfortunately, as Elena said already, this huge amount of population, civilians that had to flee their homes. A lot of them lost their homes totally, lost their documents. And at this point, the estimation is about 16 million people have been pretty much displaced already. A lot of them left the country, but a lot of them are displaced in Ukraine, and they do need basic needs, socks, underwear, toothbrushes, simple stuff. So we still have, if you can even reach out to your own dentists, we have an official letter that we are reaching out to dentists in the area to help us provide with some dental supplies, whether it's 2 toothbrushes to toothpaste, whether it's some dental material that is expiring. We'll take everything. Some dental instruments that they want to get rid of, we will take it. So if you can spread the word about us, please do. We really appreciate it. And we are very grateful for all the support. We're so humbled by the support of this community. Rochester has been amazing to Ukrainian community. And that's why I guess we settled more than 100 years ago here. So we're very, very grateful to everybody who came today as well because we cannot stay indifferent in this situation. Thank you so much for your support. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena and Yulia. I encourage you to donate. They'll be around afterwards if you want to talk to them more about other ways you can support them. So thank you for being here. Our next reader is Veronica Crisneros.
Hi, I'm Veronica. I'll be reading some poems by the writer Helena Kruk. She is from Ukraine. She was born in 1974 and still lives in Ukraine. A woman named Hope. It rained for 4 straight months, knocking down crops, trampling gardens. They came as new recruits, diligently watering the roadside bushes as long as they could to slow their march to foreign war. And none of us knew where the war zone actually was. No one understood the true scope of the losses. When a woman called Hope came to lift our spirits, she had no intention of dying. Each person, she told us, carries their own war and a weapon they'll clutch to the end. And victory is a whore. She doesn't care where she lies. She belongs to anyone. And we listened to a roll of thunder leave her throat while she sang to us strange marching drills and lullabies. Every drop of her saliva a balm containing the poison of love. Because every woman, she warned, knows this kind of love that brings her low, shoves a gun barrel in her mouth and does not kill her. After the rains pass through her, troop after troop washes away the blood. The next poem is called Like a Blood Clot, Something. Like a blood clot, something catches him in the ride, though in life, what is fair? So he is annoying with his limping through the hospital courtyard, missing a limb, as if he'd been limbless in those unmiraculous fields, so saturated with blood, no foot can fall without grasping its own absence. Entered into war's tedious register where limbs, faces, bodies are rejected like blood from mismatched donors. His units all scattered throughout the rye fields. He begins to gather them up when he closes his eyes. The women bring food, clothes, medicine, and as is their habit, sit at his feet. The next poem is called Someone Stands Between You and Death. Someone stands between you and death, but who knows how much more my heart can stand. Where you are, it's so important someone prays for you, even with their own words, even if they don't clasp their hands and kneel. Plucking the stems off strawberries from the garden, I recall how I scolded you when you were small for squashing the berries before they ripened. My heart whispers, death, he hasn't ripened yet. He's still green. Nothing in his life has been sweeter than unwashed strawberries. I beg you, oh God, don't place him at the front. Please don't rain rockets down on him. Oh God, I don't even know what a rocket looks like. My son, I can't picture the war even to myself. The next poem is called Like a Bullet, the Lord Saves Those Who Save Themselves. Like a bullet, the Lord saves those who save themselves. Like the bullet that the man in a trench saves for his own temple. Beyond the boundary that separates us from them, the harvest birds chirp to you that already your son is kicking in the womb. Hide yourself in a fir tree's needle, in a tiny boy's face that falls through the junipers to search for you. In a field that lies fallow, in the living soil, you left for him the heaviest words, fatherland and dad. A fatherland passed from father to son, replacing his father, one so young anyone would weep. But God let him feel in his bones that he is my last, truest bullet. Save him for me, O Lord. Thank you.
Veronica. Our next reader is David Rockberg.
Hi, thanks for everybody coming and supporting this great cause, and Writers and Books for sponsoring it. I'm going to read 3 poems by Vasil Holoborodko, and a little bit about him, I think, to help us understand. He was born in Adrianople in Luhansk in 1945, and then in 1965, because of his alleged anti-Soviet views, he was expelled from university, and his work was banned from publication in the Soviet Union for the next 20 years. In 1988, he was allowed to publish finally again and resume his university studies. He writes about his poems that we are all outcasts from the Eden of our childhood. And all the time during our adult life, we think about that paradise and the impossibility of returning to it. Often this paradise does not remain in the state we remember. Its existence is threatened by other circumstances and people. Jeopardy accompanies us always, and rescue can come in many guises. The safest way of saving one's private Eden is escaping it, even in the shape of a dandelion seed. Those who die defending their cultural kingdom make up the mythical serpent walls that defend our Ukraine and its customs. And those images will come up in a couple of poems. And the translator, Svetlana Lavochenko, says that the giant mythical fortress protecting Ukraine is traditionally translated as serpent walls, but this name, she didn't feel the name fit the texture of the poem, so she uses the term dragon hill forts. So the first poem, I fly away in the shape of a dandelion seed. I know that from here, you cannot escape by plane. You have to be able to fly on your own. Cats in the house, so many cats, gathered from the whole neighborhood. How did they catch a whiff of my departure? Not our cats, but feral cats, although there's no such thing as a cat gone wild. Cats as a warning and threat to my flight as a bird. They notice a red spot on my chest like a linnet's, so I'm forced to take flight in the form of a dandelion seed. I leave the house in search of wide open spaces, past my garden and into the street, and float toward a direction very remote. Now the wind gusts will carry me away, away. And the next 2 poems, he interrupts with a little form. He'll interrupt the poem in parentheses and have the word epiphany. And then a phrase, a symbol, by definition of, and then the definition of the symbol. So he's doing that on purpose. I pick up my footprints. I stoop to pick up my footprints. Somebody seeing me might think I'm gathering mushrooms, healing herbs, or flowers into a bunch. But no, I collect my footprints, my traces everywhere I walked for many years. Here are the footprints I left while herding sheep on the steppe. Here, I took this path to school, and these are my steps from my route to work. I'm gathering my footprints here so that strangers don't trample them, I tell anyone who's curious. Epiphany. A footprint is a symbol by definition of something rooted in the past. In my mind, I slip my footprints between the pages. Now, whenever I read a book, I chance upon an old footprint. I study it for a long time, the footprint I was left as a child walking beneath the cherry tree. All the footprints gathered so far, an entire footstep herbarium in books. If I put them all in one row, their path wouldn't lead me home. And the last poem, The Dragon Hill Forts. All over Ukraine, around every town and village, high walls jut from the landscape. Legend calls them serpents. Pottery historians, archaeologists, study where they belong. Even radiocarbon dating can't specify their age. If we cannot determine a date, if we cannot fathom the age of the hill forts, they must have been here as long as the Ukrainians. Those walls are called serpents because once upon a time, the holy blacksmiths, Kuzma and Damian, harnessed a dragon to a plow. This tillage jutted into the serpent's wall. What else could have plowed these forts but a dragon? Epiphany, a dragon, no dragon, a symbol by definition of someone who possesses great power. The hill forts were built to protect against the cold creeping in from the forest, so some people believe, or for protection against raw meat eaters from the forest, so others believe, or for protection against invaders from the forest, so the third party believes. But no, dragon plowing did not raise these hill forts. Our grandfathers wrapped them around every town and village to protect the dragon from the cold given off from the forest, from the raw meat eaters of the forest, from the invaders lurking in the forest. Epiphany, dragon, no dragon, a symbol by definition of someone who wields great power, whose purpose is to observe our custom. So, rising all over Ukraine, encircling every town and village, lofty hill forts, dragon hill forts, still protect our dragon, still protect our custom. Every year, the hill forts grow taller, not because we, with every hatful, build them up little by little, but because the graves of warriors force them upward, defenders of our dragon, defenders of our custom, buried in the hill forts around each town and village. When I die, bury me in a dragon hill fort, so that the dragon hill forts around our Ukraine grow taller by the thickness of the sheet of paper on which this poem was written.
Thank you so much, David. Our next reader is Michelle Daschewski.
Hi, I'm going to be reading the poems of Mariana Kijanowska. The first one is called I Believed Before. I believed before that death turns sea to stone. Death is when the tide of the earth covers us up. Now I believe death is the word unknown to my soul. Speak, death. Is death, tell me and return. Enter my body where my soul drifts like a boat. This is what I will think about again and from the very beginning. My dear, your boat is in me. This next one is called In a Tent Like in a Nest. In a tent like in a nest, twilight, pleasant and still, smells of rosin, angel feathers, home. The nature of things reveals itself without warning. Hands and throat ache from smoke, sweet and salty as blood. A flash fire breaches the fabric beneath the skin, insomniacs trying to breathe with shrinking lungs. Tomorrow's light will freeze somebody's pupils and lips, and today it is time to gather the stones, dead and alive, warming them through body, teaching them to fly. This third one is called We Swallowed an Air Like Earth. We swallowed an air like earth, the kind of black neighbors garden together. And in that black, as in a fleshy cherry, sweet and bitter. And in that sweet and that bitter, salt and flesh we stored in our lungs many years beforehand. Not the cherry plum, another tree. Some of us exhaled cherry pits, some bullets. Stones bulged from their sockets and became eyes. Everything else became memory, air, fire. This next one is The Eye, a bulb that maps its own bed. The eye, a bulb that maps its own bed, summons memory, not yet alive, but begun. Even the first war of my lifetime doesn't mean death, just smoke. A white skeleton, a holiday cup of water, emptied, crushed, carried out of the room. Thistles whisper, get up and move. A bullet wants to kiss you. This one is Naked Agony Begets a Poison of Poisons. Naked agony begets a poison of poisons. Matter repressed kisses the shell. Beyond that, here's dirt underneath the fingernails, dregs discarded from the sieve. Speak of the wound, how sand contains and releases the tide. In musty trenches, the day's undeath, for only a moment. God is born, comes of age, slumbers and is risen, somewhere in a meadow near Luhansk, amongst the blood and hazel trees. There's one more. This one is I wake up, sigh, and head off to war. I wake up, sigh, and head off to war, for the lilacs have already faded. I scrub, I slice the skin off my palm and feed death from my hand. But death is not hungry. A fledgling, a cuckoo chick, begs my pardon. Don't go, she pleads, there's nothing there. I too have a soul, she says. The lilacs have faded. The orchards will bloom. The war will come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And our final reader is Allison Myers.
Ludmila Kirkonska. Did you know that if you hide under a blanket and pull it over your head, then for sure, World War II won't happen? Instead, lie there, don't breathe, don't let your feet stick out. Or if you do, stick one out bit by bit. Or try this helpful trick to stop a war. First, carefully stick out one foot, then the other. Now touch the floor, lie back down, turn to one side, facing the wall. Turn your back to the war. Now that it's behind your back, it can thrash and shred. You just close your eyes, pull the blanket over your head, stock up on bread. And when you just can't deal with caring for peace anymore, tear off some chunks. And when the night comes, eat what you've stored. How to describe a human other than he's alone? What to add that he himself won't guess to add? Pockets full of posies, a little lamb for Mary. What else is there to cast at a man? A human is alone, whether he dies or snores. What else to say about a sleeping man? A man is sleeping or simply turned to a wall. A man turned to a wall not to see his nation. Another turned to a wall between four walls. A man who turned to a wall, weary of war. Ear of the war, so much noise from a single man, as if a whale was birthed into a common shell, as if fear was trapped in the heart's punch bag. A lonely human is dust. Where to run from dust? Where the nose points. But a person needs lunch, a roof over his head, a sun over his head, and also to laugh, blood over his head, and also to bleed. One man for all men, no man for one man. Anybody? No one. A man in trouble, in death, in office, in line, in vogue, in disguise, in fight, everywhere alone. A brown-haired man, a redhead, a blonde, a white man, a black man, a rainbow man. One person singled red with sorrow by one wall. The whole soldier does not suffer. It's just the legs, the arms, just blowing snow, just meager rain. The whole soldier shrugs off hurt. It's just missile systems, hail and beach, just bullets on the wing, just happiness ahead, just meteorological pogroms, Geoherostratos wannabes, just the girl with a pointer poking the map in the stomach, just thunder, lightning, just dreadful losses, just the day with a dented helmet, just God who doesn't protect. A country in the shape of a puddle on the map. Any country is an easy target in March, in July, August, September, October, as long as it rains and maps litter the street. Stop, who goes there? General Oaken knees. The red square of his naked chest shines the way. And behind him, a half shadow, half man, half orphan, half exile, whose mouth is as coarse as his land, double land, where every cave is at war. Do you say there won't be a war? I say nothing. A small gray person cancels this 21st century, adjusts his country's clocks for the winter war. I planted a camellia in the yard. I wanted to be a lady, not a war-ravaged rag, to cast down my lashes, let fall a light glove, put on red beads, patent leather boots. I listen. Are there explosions? Does someone stomp the earth? One night, a humanitarian convoy arrived in her dream, legs drawn to her chest, head under the sheet. She sleeps on her right side, back braced by the wall, the way people sleep during humanitarian wars. The same exact way all tribes sleep at all times, waking only because of silence, that awful silence. During that silence, don't open the gates. Behind them, little humanitarians, heads facing the wrong way. When a country of, overall, nice people turns slowly fascist, nice people do not notice this transformation all at once. As when a person we know intimately goes next to us through an imperceptible process of aging. Imperceptibly, new wrinkles slice the skin, frightening, deep. Nice people nod when they run into each other and try more and more to lower their eyes, until finally raising them becomes an inhuman gesture.
Thank you so much, Allison. I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for supporting. Donate to RocMaidan. The book is for sale downstairs. Proceeds are also going to RocMaidan for that. And I want to thank you so much for coming and have a good night.